The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched far above Jiwoo's head. She stood in the center of the room, her hands bound with glowing chains that burned her wrists. Around her, beings from 100 different worlds sat in their high seats, looking down at her like she was nothing more than an insect. Jiwoo's heart pounded in her chest. She was only 23 years old. She had joined the human exploration fleet just 6 months ago, excited to see the stars and meet alien life. Now she stood accused of a crime she didn't commit, facing judges who refused to listen to her words. The lead counselor was named Taimin. He was tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the bright lights. His 4 eyes stared at Jiwoo without any warmth or kindness. He raised one long hand and the room fell silent. "The human known as Jiwoo has been found guilty," Taimin announced. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "She violated the sacred boundaries of the Forbidden Zone. This crime carries only one punishment: death." "No," Jiwoo shouted. Her voice cracked with fear. "Please listen to me. My ship's engine failed. I didn't choose to enter that space. It was an accident." But Taimin simply waved his hand, dismissing her words like they meant nothing. "We have heard enough from this primitive creature. The evidence is clear. Her vessel was detected in restricted territory. Ignorance of our laws is not an excuse." High above in the observation gallery, Hyunwoo pressed his hands against the transparent wall. He was Jiwoo's captain and friend. They had trained together on Earth, had shared meals and stories during the long journey through space. Now he could only watch as the council decided her fate. "This is wrong," Hyunwoo yelled, though he knew they couldn't hear him through the thick barrier. "She's telling the truth." Next to him stood Captain Da-un, the leader of their human vessel. She was a strong woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her jaw was tight with anger, but she remained silent. She knew that any outburst from the humans would only make things worse for Jiwoo. Mireille, their ship's engineer, had tears running down her face. She was the one who had tried to fix the engine when it started failing. She felt responsible for what happened to Jiwoo. "If only I had caught the problem earlier," she whispered. Down in the chamber, guards moved toward Jiwoo. They were massive creatures, twice her size, covered in thick armor. They grabbed her arms roughly and began dragging her toward a door at the far end of the hall. "Please," Jiwoo cried out. "I have a family on Earth. I have a mother and a father who are waiting for me to come home. Please don't do this." But the council members looked away. Some of them seemed uncomfortable, but none spoke up to defend her. They had made their decision, and the Galactic Council never reversed its judgments. To do so would be to admit they were wrong, and the council was never wrong. Taimin stood and addressed the gathered representatives. "Let this be a lesson to all species who think they can ignore our laws. The human race is young and foolish. They do not understand the order that we have maintained for thousands of years. This execution will teach them respect." As Jiwoo was dragged through the door, she caught one last glimpse of the observation gallery. She saw Hyunwoo's face, saw the pain and helplessness in his eyes. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that she didn't blame him. But then the door closed and she was pulled into darkness. The guards took her down a long corridor carved from black stone. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, giving off a dim red light. Jiwoo could feel heat rising from somewhere below. The air grew thick and hard to breathe. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Before the trial, she had heard whispers about the council's traditional method of execution. One of the guards finally spoke. His voice was deep and rumbling. "To the Dravax. The sacred beast will judge your soul." Jiwoo felt her blood turn cold. The Dravax. Every species in the galaxy knew that name. It was the council's most powerful weapon, a creature so fearsome that its very existence kept entire civilizations in line. The council claimed it was a divine being, sent by the gods to punish the wicked. But Jiwoo had read the human intelligence reports. Their scientists believed the Dravax was something else entirely, perhaps a biological weapon created long ago. Whatever it was, it had never failed to kill those thrown into its lair. For 10,000 years it had devoured every criminal the council sent to it. They reached a massive door made of metal that looked like melted gold. Strange patterns moved across its surface like living things. The guards pressed their hands against the door and it began to open, sliding apart with a deep grinding sound. Heat blasted out, making Jiwoo's skin feel like it was burning. She tried to pull back, but the guard's grip was too strong. They pushed her forward and suddenly she was falling. Jiwoo tumbled down a steep slope of smooth rock. She tried to grab onto something, anything, but there was nothing to hold. She rolled and slid for what felt like forever, her body hitting the ground hard with each impact. Finally, she came to a stop at the bottom of an enormous cavern. The space was so large she couldn't see the walls on either side. Above her, the opening she had fallen through looked like a tiny circle of light, impossibly far away. The ground beneath her was warm, almost hot. It was made of dark volcanic rock that had been smoothed by countless years. Jiwoo tried to stand, but her legs were shaking too badly. She had cuts and bruises all over her body from the fall. Then she heard it, a sound that made every instinct in her body scream to run. A deep rumbling breath that echoed through the cavern. Something massive was moving in the darkness ahead of her. Jiwoo forced herself to her feet. Her hands were still bound, but she backed away from the sound, her eyes trying to adjust to the dim red glow that seemed to come from the rocks themselves. A shape emerged from the shadows. At first, Jiwoo thought she was seeing a mountain moving, but then she realized the terrible truth. This was the Dravax. The creature was enormous beyond anything Jiwoo had imagined. Its body was covered in scales that looked like they were made of polished obsidian, reflecting the red light in a way that made them seem to glow. Its head was the size of her entire ship, with horns that curved back like ancient crowns. Wings folded against its sides seemed to stretch back into the darkness forever. Claws, each one as long as Jiwoo was tall, scraped against the stone floor as it moved closer. Its eyes, huge and golden, focused on her with an intelligence that was somehow worse than if it had been just a mindless beast. Jiwoo wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her voice was frozen in her throat. This was it. This was how she would die. Far from Earth. Far from everyone she loved. The Dravax moved closer, its massive head lowering toward her. She could feel its breath, hot and smelling of sulfur and smoke. Those golden eyes studied her, moving across her body like it was examining every detail. Jiwoo closed her eyes and waited for the end. But the killing bite never came. Instead of pain, Jiwoo felt something gentle press against her chest. She opened her eyes in shock. The Dravax's enormous snout was touching her but not attacking. The creature was sniffing her, its nostrils flaring as it took in her scent. The golden eyes came close to her face, so close that Jiwoo could see herself reflected in them. She stood perfectly still, afraid that any movement would trigger the attack she knew was coming. But the Dravax just stared at her, tilting its massive head to one side like it was confused. Then something impossible happened. The creature made a sound, low and rumbling, that wasn't a growl. It was almost gentle, almost concerned. The Dravax pulled its head back and released a roar that shook the entire cavern. Rocks fell from the ceiling high above, crashing down around them, but Jiwoo wasn't afraid of the roar. She was too shocked by what she felt in her mind. When the Dravax had roared, something had touched her thoughts. It was like a voice, but not in any language she knew. It was feelings and images and emotions all mixed together. And what she felt from the creature wasn't hatred or hunger. It was recognition. The Dravax moved around her in a circle, its enormous body creating a wall between Jiwoo and the rest of the cavern. Then it lowered itself to the ground and curled its body around her, not touching her but creating a protective barrier on all sides. Jiwoo's legs finally gave out, and she sat down hard on the warm stone. Her mind was racing, trying to understand what was happening. Every record, every report, every story about the Dravax said the same thing. It killed everyone the council sent to it. It had never spared anyone. Not once in 10,000 years, so why was she still alive? High above in the council chamber, Taimin and the other leaders watched through their observation screens. The images came from cameras hidden in the cavern walls. They showed the Dravax curled protectively around the human girl. "This is impossible," one of the counselors whispered. She had green skin and multiple tentacles instead of arms. "The Dravax has never refused a judgment." Taimin's four eyes narrowed. His hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that the metal began to bend. There must be an explanation. Perhaps the beast is simply playing with its food before eating. But even as he said it, he didn't believe his own words. The Dravax wasn't playing. It was protecting. And that terrified him more than anything else could. "Send in the retrieval team," Taimin ordered. "We will take the human out and find another method of execution. We cannot allow this failure to become public knowledge." Down in the cavern, Jiwoo was experiencing something that would change everything. As she sat within the circle of the Dravax's body, More of those strange feelings and images began flooding into her mind. At first it was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a waterfall. But slowly her brain began to make sense of the information. She saw images of a world she had never visited. A beautiful planet with purple skies and silver oceans. She saw beings that looked similar to the Dravax but smaller, walking on two legs and building cities that reached toward the clouds. These were people, not monsters. They had families and children. They had art and music and joy. Then the images turned dark. She saw ships falling from the sky, cities burning, and these beautiful creatures dying by the thousands. She saw the Galactic Council's forces attacking, showing no mercy. It was genocide. The Council had wiped out an entire species, but they had kept one alive. The last of its kind. They had taken it and done terrible things to it, changing its body, making it grow and mutate until it became the monster that now existed. They had chained it in this cavern and forced it to kill for them, using technology and torture to make it obey. Tears ran down Jiwoo's face as she experienced the creature's pain and loneliness. For 10,000 years it had been trapped here, forced to kill people who were sent to die. It had no choice. Every time it tried to resist, the Council would activate devices implanted in its body, causing agony that made it submit. "I'm so sorry," Jiwoo whispered, reaching out to touch the Dravax's scales. "I'm so sorry for what they did to you." The creature rumbled softly and more images came. Jiwoo saw genetic patterns, DNA strands that her human education helped her recognize. The Dravax's original species, the people who had been destroyed, shared genetic markers with humans. It was distant, separated by millions of years of evolution, but the connection was there. Humanity and the Dravax's people came from the same ancient ancestors. They were distant cousins linked by blood that stretched across the galaxy. That was why the Dravax had recognized her. That was why it refused to kill her. After 10,000 years of forced murder, it had finally found someone who carried the genetic echo of its lost family. Suddenly, alarms began blaring through the cavern. Jiwoo looked up to see a door opening high on one of the walls. Armed soldiers began descending on cables, their weapons pointed at both Jiwoo and the Dravax. "By order of the Council, the human is to be retrieved," one of them shouted through a speaker system. "Stand down, sacred beast." The Dravax raised its head and released another roar, this one filled with rage. Flames erupted from its mouth, not aimed at Jiwoo but at the descending soldiers. Their cables melted instantly and they fell, screaming. But before they hit the ground, the Dravax caught them with one massive wing, setting them down roughly but alive in a corner of the cavern. "It won't kill them," Jiwoo realized aloud. "Even after everything they've done, it won't kill unless forced." More soldiers appeared, and these ones had different weapons. They fired nets made of energy that wrapped around the Dravax's wings. The creature howled in pain, and Jiwoo felt that pain as if it were her own. The connection between them had grown stronger, creating a bond that let her feel what the Dravax felt. "Stop it," Jiwoo screamed. "You're hurting it." But the soldiers didn't listen. They fired more nets trying to restrain the massive creature. The Dravax thrashed and fought, but there were too many of them. For 10,000 years it had been controlled through pain and fear, and now those old tortures were being used again. Jiwoo felt anger building inside her chest, hotter than anything she had ever experienced. This wasn't right. This creature had suffered for so long, and now when it finally found a reason to hope, they were punishing it. Without thinking, Jiwoo ran toward the nearest soldier. Her hands were still bound, but she threw her whole body at him, knocking him off balance. He fell and his weapon clattered across the stone floor. "You don't understand," Jiwoo shouted. "It's not a monster. It's a prisoner. You're the monsters for what you've done." Another soldier grabbed Jiwoo from behind, lifting her off her feet. "Foolish human. The Dravax is sacred. It serves the Council's justice." "There's no justice here." Jiwoo struggled against his grip. "Only murder and slavery." The Dravax saw Jiwoo being held and something inside it snapped. All the torture devices the Council had implanted in its body activated at once, trying to force it into submission. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the creature fought through the pain. Its roar shook the entire Council complex. Above ground, buildings cracked and people fell to the ground. The Dravax tore through the energy nets like they were paper and spread its wings fully for the first time in centuries. The soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. Even the one holding Jiwoo released her and fled toward the exits. In moments, the cavern was empty except for Jiwoo and the Dravax. The creature was breathing heavily, clearly in pain from the torture devices. Jiwoo could see lights blinking beneath its scales, could feel the electricity coursing through its body trying to force it back into submission. "What can I do?" Jiwoo asked, moving closer to the suffering creature. "How can I help you?" Images flooded her mind again. The Dravax was showing her something important. There was a device implanted deep in its back, right where the spine met the skull. It was the master control, the thing that allowed the council to torture it into obedience. If that device was removed, the Dravax would be free, but removing it would be dangerous. The device was buried beneath scales and muscle, and it was designed to explode if tampered with incorrectly. It would take precision and courage and trust. Jiwoo looked up at the tiny circle of light far above, the opening through which she had been thrown. Somewhere up there, Hyunwoo and Captain Da-yoon and Mirai were watching. Somewhere up there, the council was planning their next move. "I'll help you," Jiwoo said firmly, placing her bound hands on the Dravax's scales. "I don't know how yet, but I promise I'll help you." The creature lowered its head and touched its snout to Jiwoo's forehead gently. In that moment, their bond became complete. They were no longer just a prisoner and a creature. They were allies. They were friends, and they were going to fight back. High above the council complex, the human vessel hung in space like a silver knife, pointed at the heart of galactic power. Captain Da-yoon stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back as she stared at the massive structure below. "They think we'll just accept this," she said quietly. "They think because we're young as a species, we'll bow to their authority." Hyunwoo stood beside her, his jaw tight with determination. "Captain, we have to get Jiwoo out. I don't care what it takes." "I know." Da-yoon turned to face her crew. There were only 30 humans on the ship, a small exploration vessel never meant for combat. But every single one of them was ready to fight. "Mirai, report!" The engineer brought up a holographic display showing the council complex's systems. "I've been scanning their defenses since they took Jiwoo. Their security is strong, but it's designed to keep armies out. They're not expecting a surgical strike from a single small ship." "Can you disable their shields?" Da-yoon asked. Mirai smiled grimly. "Already done. I've been uploading a virus into their system for the past hour. They haven't noticed because their security teams are all focused on the Dravax situation." Hyunwoo looked at the captain. "What situation?" Da-yoon pressed a button and surveillance footage filled the main screen. They all watched in amazement as the Dravax protected Jiwoo, as it refused to kill her, as it fought off the council's soldiers. "She's alive," Hyunwoo breathed. "She's actually alive." "More than that," Mirai said, studying the readings her instruments were picking up. "I'm detecting some kind of energy connection between Jiwoo and that creature. They're bonded somehow." Da-yoon made her decision. "We're going in. Hyunwoo, gather the assault team. Mirai, plot us a course directly to that cavern. I don't care if we have to crash through their walls to get there." "Understood, Captain." Within minutes, the human ship was moving. It dropped from orbit like a falling star, its engines burning bright as it accelerated toward the council complex. Alarms began screaming through the alien structure as sensors detected the incoming vessel. Taemin stormed into the command center, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "The humans are attacking? Have they lost their minds?" "They're heading straight for the Dravax's lair," one of his officers reported. "They're going to crash right through the northern wall. Stop them. Activate all defensive weapons." But Mirai's virus had done its work well. When the council tried to fire their weapons, nothing happened. Their systems were frozen, locked out by code that was rewriting itself faster than their technicians could counter it. The human ship hit the northern wall of the council complex like a battering ram. The ancient stone shattered and exploded inward. The vessel pushed through, its shields absorbing the impact until it broke through into the massive cavern where Jiwoo and the Dravax waited. Hyunwoo was already moving before the ship fully stopped. He led a team of 5 other humans out through the cargo bay door, all of them wearing armor and carrying weapons. "They hit the cavern floor running! Jiwoo!" Hyunwoo called out. She emerged from behind the Dravax's massive body, her face lighting up with hope and relief. "Hyunwoo, you came." "Of course we came." He reached her and quickly cut the glowing chains from her wrists with a plasma torch. "We're not leaving anyone behind." The Dravax watched the humans with curiosity, not hostility. Through her bond with the creature, Jiwoo could feel its cautious hope. These small beings had come to help. Perhaps not all of the galaxy's species were like the Council. "Captain," Jiwoo said urgently, speaking into the communicator Hyunwoo handed her. "The Dravax isn't what they say it is. It's a prisoner like I was. And there's a device in its back that the Council uses to control it. If we can remove it, the creature will be free." Da-yoon's voice came back immediately. "Can it be done?" Jiwoo looked at the Dravax and images filled her mind again. The creature was showing her exactly where the device was, exactly how it was attached to its nervous system. "Yes, but it's dangerous. If we do it wrong, the device will explode." "Then we'll do it right," Mireille said, joining them in the cavern. She had brought her engineering tools and a medical scanner. "Show me where." The Dravax lowered itself to the ground and turned its massive head to expose the back of its neck. Even lying down, the creature was as tall as a 3-story building. Mireille would need to climb up to reach the spot where the device was implanted. "I'll do it," Jiwoo said firmly. "I can feel where it is through our bond. And if something goes wrong, at least I'll be the only one hurt." "No way," Hyunwoo protested. "You just survived execution. You're not risking your life again." Jiwoo looked at him with fierce determination. "This creature saved my life. It protected me when it could have killed me. I won't leave it in chains." Before anyone could argue further, the cavern shook. Council soldiers were breaching through multiple entrances, hundreds of them pouring in with heavy weapons. They weren't trying to capture anymore. They were trying to kill. "Defensive positions," Da-yoon ordered through the communicators. The human team took cover behind rocks and debris from the ship's crash. They began firing back at the Council forces, their weapons bright in the dim cavern, but they were outnumbered 20-1. The Dravax roared and spread its wings, shielding the humans with its body. Energy blasts from the Council weapons hit its scales and bounced off harmlessly. The creature's hide was stronger than any armor humans had ever created. "Go!" The Dravax's feelings reached Jiwoo's mind, clear as words. "Free me while I protect your people." Jiwoo grabbed Mireille's tools and began climbing the Dravax's scales. Each one was as large as a dinner plate and provided good handholds. The creature remained perfectly still despite the battle raging around it, despite the weapons fire hitting its body. As she climbed, Jiwoo could feel the pain from the control device growing stronger. The Council was activating it again, trying to force the Dravax to turn on the humans. Electricity coursed through the creature's nervous system, causing its muscles to spasm. "Hold on," Jiwoo called out, though she didn't know if the Dravax could understand her words or just her feelings. "I'm almost there." She reached the spot high on the creature's neck where the device was buried. Through her bond, she could see it in her mind like an X-ray image. The device was about the size of her fist, with tendrils extending into the Dravax's spine and brainstem. Mireille was talking to her through the communicator, guiding her. "You need to cut the tendrils in a specific order. If you sever the wrong one first, the device will detonate." "Tell me the order," Jiwoo said, pulling out a plasma cutter from the toolkit. Below, the battle was intensifying. More Council soldiers kept coming, and the humans were running low on ammunition. Captain Da-eun had brought the ship's guns online and was firing at the entrances, trying to slow the enemy advance. Taimin himself appeared at one of the upper entrances, his face twisted with rage. "Kill them all. Kill the humans and kill the Dravax. We will not allow this rebellion." "First tendril is on the left side," Mireille instructed. "It's connected to the pain receptors. Cut it carefully." Jiwoo pressed the plasma cutter against the Dravax's scale. The creature's hide was incredibly tough, but the bond between them allowed it to soften just enough for her to reach through. Her hand pushed into the warm flesh beneath, feeling for the device. She found the first tendril and carefully positioned the cutter. Here goes nothing. The plasma blade sliced through the artificial nerve. The Dravax shuddered but didn't cry out. Immediately, some of the pain eased. Jiwoo could feel the relief flowing through their connection. "Good," Mireille said. "Next is the central tendril. It's the one pumping the control chemicals into the bloodstream." Jiwoo worked faster now, her hand steady despite the chaos around her. She found the second tendril and cut it. The Dravax's body relaxed further, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the creature felt its mind beginning to clear. "Last one," Mireille said urgently. "This is the detonation trigger. You have to cut it in one smooth motion. If you hesitate or it's uneven, the device will explode." Jiwoo took a deep breath. Below, she could hear Hyunwoo shouting orders to the team, could hear the sound of weapons fire and energy blast hitting stone. The smell of smoke filled the air. She positioned the cutter against the final tendril. Through her bond, she could feel the Dravax's complete trust in her. This ancient being, who had been tortured for millennia, was putting its life in her hands without hesitation. "Thank you for trusting me," Jiwoo whispered. Then she cut. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The tendril separated cleanly and the device went dark. No explosion came. Instead, the device simply fell away, pulling free from the Dravax's body and tumbling to the cavern floor far below. The Dravax released a roar that was unlike any sound it had made before. This wasn't anger or pain. This was pure joy, pure freedom. The creature's wings spread fully and a brilliant light erupted from its scales. Energy that had been suppressed for 10,000 years suddenly burst free. The light was so bright that everyone in the cavern had to shield their eyes. When the light faded, the Dravax was transformed. Its scales now gleamed with colors that hadn't been visible before, purples and blues and silvers. Its eyes glowed with intelligence and power that had been hidden beneath the torture and control, and it was angry. The Dravax rose to its full height and turned to face the Count. The Dravax's roar echoed not just through the cavern, but through the entire council complex and beyond. Ships in orbit felt their hulls vibrate from the sound. On nearby planets, seismic instruments detected the shockwave. After 10,000 years of silence, the last of the Varani people was speaking again. Jiwoo slid down from the creature's neck, her hands burned and shaking, but her heart soaring with triumph. The moment her feet hit the ground, Hyunwoo was there to catch her, helping her stay upright. "You did it," he said, amazement in his voice. "You actually did it." "We did it," Jiwoo corrected, looking around at the human team who had risked everything to save her. "We all did." The wall of fire that the Dravax had created kept the council soldiers at bay, but Jiwoo knew it wouldn't last forever. Through her bond with the creature, she could feel its power, but she could also feel its exhaustion. 10,000 years of torture had weakened it. It was free now, but not yet strong enough to fight an entire army. Captain Dayun's voice came through all their communicators. "We need to leave now. I'm detecting massive energy signatures. They're bringing in their war fleet." But the Dravax had other plans. The creature turned its massive head toward Jiwoo, and suddenly her mind was flooded with images more vivid than anything she had experienced before. The bond between them had grown stronger now that the control device was gone. The Dravax wasn't just sharing feelings anymore. It was sharing memories, complete detailed memories from its entire life. Jiwoo gasped and fell to her knees as thousands of years of experience poured into her consciousness. She saw the Varani civilization at its height, beautiful cities of crystal and light. She saw their art, their music, their scientific achievements. They had been a peaceful people, explorers and philosophers who wanted only to understand the universe. Then she saw the council arrive. She saw the lies they told, the treaties they signed and then broke. She saw the Varani people's confusion when the attacks began. They hadn't understood why their new friends were suddenly trying to destroy them. The images showed the truth that the council had hidden for 10 millennia. The Varani had discovered something, some secret about the universe that the council couldn't allow to become public knowledge. So the council had decided to eliminate them entirely. But they needed to keep one Varani alive. They needed its genetic material for their experiments. They needed it as a weapon. So they took the youngest, the last child of the Varani race, and they twisted it. They used technology and genetic manipulation to make it grow larger, stronger, more fearsome. They erased its ability to speak in ways other species could understand. They turned it into a monster. And they used it to terrorize the galaxy into submission. For 10,000 years they had told every civilization the same lie. The Dravax was a divine being, sent by the gods to punish the wicked. Obey the council or face the beast's judgment. But it was all built on murder and slavery. Jiwoo's eyes snapped open, tears streaming down her face. "We have to show them," she said urgently. "Everyone needs to see the truth." "Show who?" Hyunwoo asked, confused. "Everyone? The whole galaxy?" Jiwoo stood up, her legs steadier now. "Mireille, can you access the council's communication networks?" The engineer was already working on her portable computer. "I can try. The virus I uploaded earlier gave us some backdoor access. What do you need?" "I need you to broadcast on every channel. Every planet, every ship, every device connected to the galactic network." "Can you do that?" Mirai's eyes widened. That would be the biggest transmission in history. But yes, theoretically, I could route it through the Council's own satellite system. They have the power and reach. Why, what are we broadcasting? Jiwoo placed her hand on the Dravax's scales. The truth. All of it. Through their bond, Jiwoo asked the Dravax for permission to share its memories. The creature agreed immediately. It had been waiting 10,000 years for someone to tell its story. Do it, Captain Dawn ordered from the ship. If we're going to fight the Council, we might as well fight them completely. Mirai's fingers flew across her computer. Okay, I'm in. I'm routing through their main hub now. Jiwoo, I can create a neural link between you and the broadcast system. Whatever memories you access from the Dravax will be transmitted exactly as you experience them. How long will we have before they shut us down? Jiwoo asked. Maybe 10 minutes if we're lucky. They'll figure out what we're doing and cut the connection. Then we'd better make those 10 minutes count. Mirai attached several small devices to Jiwoo's temples. They tingled against her skin as they activated, creating a connection between her nervous system and the broadcast network. You're live in 3, 2, 1. Jiwoo closed her eyes and opened her mind fully to the Dravax. The creature's memories flooded through her and through her. They flooded out to every corner of the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, people stopped what they were doing as their communication devices activated on their own. Screens lit up in homes and public spaces. Ships' displays flickered to life. Even the Council's own screens in their complex showed the transmission. They all saw the same thing. The beautiful world of the Varani people before it burned. The peaceful civilization that had wanted only to explore and learn. Then they saw the Council ships arriving. They saw the meetings where treaties were signed. They saw the Varani people's joy at making new friends. And they saw the betrayal. The transmission showed the moment when the Council's true nature was revealed. The Varani had discovered something the Council wanted to remain hidden. The records showed it clearly. The Varani scientists had found proof that the Council had destroyed dozens of other civilizations before them. They had found evidence of genocides, of slave species that had been wiped from history, of atrocities that went back thousands of years. The Council's power wasn't built on diplomacy and justice. It was built on terror and murder. They eliminated any species that became too powerful, too advanced, or too curious. They maintained control by keeping everyone else afraid. The Varani had planned to share this information with the galaxy, so the Council had decided to destroy them. The transmission showed the attacks. Orbital bombardment that turned beautiful cities into burning ruins. Ground forces that hunted down survivors with ruthless efficiency. The Varani people had no military to speak of. They had never needed one. They were slaughtered by the millions. Across the galaxy, people watched in horror. Many species had lost touch with their own ancient histories, had forgotten the suspicious circumstances around the disappearances of neighboring civilizations. Now they were seeing the truth. The transmission showed the Council soldiers capturing the last Varani child. They showed the laboratories where it was tortured and changed. They showed how its mind was shattered and rebuilt, how its body was mutated, how it was transformed from a child into a weapon, and they showed the 10,000 years that followed. Every execution, every innocent person thrown to the Dravax because they had angered the Council in some small way. The viewers saw the creature's agony as it was forced to kill, saw its despair as century after century passed with no hope of freedom. In the Council's command center, Taemin was screaming orders. "Cut the transmission. Cut it now. We're trying," his technicians shouted back. "The virus has locked us out of our own systems." On the bridge of the human ship, Captain Da-un watched the chaos unfolding. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Riots had broken out on Council-controlled worlds. Several species were declaring their independence. The Council's authority was crumbling in real time. "Captain," one of her crew members reported, "we're receiving hundreds of transmissions. Other species are offering support. They want to help us." Dayun allowed herself a small smile. "Reply to all of them. Tell them we appreciate their support and we'll need it." Back in the cavern, Jiwoo was struggling to maintain the connection. Sharing the Dravax's memories was exhausting, like running a marathon while solving complex math problems. But she pushed through the fatigue. The galaxy needed to see everything. The transmission showed the Council's other crimes. Wars they had started to profit from. Species they had enslaved and then claimed had gone extinct naturally. Resources stolen from primitive worlds. Experiments on sentient beings that violated every moral principle any civilization held dear. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only 8 minutes, the transmission ended. The Council's technicians had finally broken through Mirai's virus and cut the connection. Jiwoo collapsed, the devices falling from her temples. Hyunwoo caught her before she hit the ground. "Is she okay?" he asked Mirai urgently. The engineer checked her scanner. "She's just exhausted. She'll be fine." But Jiwoo was smiling despite her exhaustion. "Did everyone see it?" she asked weakly. "The whole galaxy saw it," Captain Dayun confirmed through the communicator. "And they're not happy with the Council." As if to prove her point, explosions began rocking the complex. The Council's own security forces had turned against their leaders. Ships that had been loyal for centuries were now firing on the command centers. Taemin watched his empire collapse from his observation deck. His 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. In less than an hour, everything the Council had built over millennia was fallen so soldier. 3 months had passed since the day the galaxy learned the truth. Jiwoo stood on a platform in the Great Hall where she had once been condemned to death. But the room looked very different now. The high seats where the Council members had sat in judgment were empty, replaced by a circular arrangement of equal chairs where representatives from 100 species now gathered. This was the new Galactic Assembly, built on principles of equality and transparency rather than fear and domination. And standing beside Jiwoo, still connected to her through their unbreakable bond, was the Dravax. The creature had chosen to remain in its transformed state rather than try to return to its original form. It said through their connection that this body, despite being born from torture, had become its own. And besides, it was useful for the work they had to do. "Representatives of the Assembly," Jiwoo spoke clearly, her voice amplified through the hall systems. "Today we celebrate the liberation of the Kovar people from the prison world where they've been held for 600 years. Applause filled the chamber. The Kovar had been one of dozens of species that the old council had enslaved or imprisoned. Over the past 3 months, the work of finding and freeing these people had become the Assembly's primary mission. Captain Da-un, now officially humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Assembly, stood and added her own words. "The Kovar have requested membership in the Assembly. They wish to join us in rebuilding a galaxy based on mutual respect rather than domination. I believe we should welcome them enthusiastically." The vote was unanimous. It always was in these cases. Every species remembered now how close they had come to being the next victims of the Council's purges. They were eager to make amends and build something better. After the session ended, Jiwoo walked through the corridors of the new assembly building. The Dravax followed her, its massive form moving with surprising grace. People no longer fled when they saw the creature. Instead, they bowed respectfully, recognizing it as a symbol of resilience and survival. Hyunwoo was waiting for them in one of the meeting rooms. He had taken a position as head of security for the human delegation, but his real job was still looking after Jiwoo. Some habits, he said, were too hard to break. The medical teams found something interesting on one of the old council research stations, Hyunwoo said, pulling up a holographic display. Genetic samples. Thousands of them preserved in stasis. Jiwoo's eyes widened. Varani samples? Among others. The council kept genetic material from every species they destroyed. They claimed it was for preservation, but really it was to study their enemies and find weaknesses. The Dravax rumbled, and Jiwoo felt complex emotions flowing through their bond. Hope mixed with caution mixed with grief. "Is it enough to bring them back?" she asked aloud, knowing the creature would understand. "That's what the scientists are trying to determine," Hyunwoo said, "but they think there might be enough viable DNA to clone New Varani. It wouldn't be the same as the original civilization, obviously, but it would be a beginning." Through their bond, Jiwoo felt the Dravax's tears, though the creature's body couldn't cry. For 10,000 years it had believed it was the last. Now there was a possibility, however small, that its people might live again. "We'll do everything we can to help," Jiwoo promised, placing her hand on the creature's scales. Mirai entered the room, carrying a tablet covered in complex equations. The engineer had discovered she had a talent for xenobiology and had been working with scientists from a dozen species to understand the genetic connections between different civilizations. "I've been analyzing the data from those samples," Mirai said excitedly, "and I found something incredible. The Varani weren't the only ones connected to humanity through ancient DNA. There are at least 7 other species with similar markers. We're all related, separated by millions of years and countless light years of space, but connected through our origins. What does that mean? Hyunwoo asked. It means the galaxy is more like a family than we ever realized, and the Council spent thousands of years tearing that family apart, keeping us separate and afraid of each other. Jiwoo thought about how much had changed in just 3 months. The Council's leadership was in custody, facing justice for their crimes. Taemin himself had been particularly difficult to capture. He had fled to a secret base, still believing he could maintain control. But when his own guards had turned on him, he'd had no choice but to surrender. The trials were ongoing, broadcast across the galaxy so everyone could see that justice was being served. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability and making sure such atrocities could never happen again. More than that, species were finally sharing technology and knowledge freely. Medical advances, agricultural techniques, manufacturing processes that the Council had kept restricted to maintain their control were now available to everyone. Worlds that had struggled with poverty and disease for centuries were getting the help they needed. Humanity had gained an unexpected position of respect in the new galaxy, not because they were powerful or advanced, but because they had been willing to fight for what was right even when it seemed hopeless. The story of how a handful of humans had rescued one of their own and freed the Dravaks had spread far and wide. Other species called it the human spirit. The refusal to abandon your people, the courage to face impossible odds, the determination to do what's right regardless of the cost. Every species had these qualities to some degree, but humans seemed to embody them in a way that inspired others. "We have another meeting in an hour," Captain Dayun said, joining them in the room. "The Kailash delegation wants to discuss the colony worlds that the Council gave to them after forcing the original inhabitants off." "Let me guess," Hyunwoo said. "They want to return the worlds to their original owners." "Exactly. The Kailash are horrified that they were unknowingly participating in ethnic cleansing. They want to make it right." This had become a common pattern. As species learned the true history of their territories and treaties, many were eager to correct the injustices. It was messy and complicated, but it was necessary work. Jiwoo's communicator chimed. It was a message from Earth. Her parents wanted to know when she would visit home. She had been so busy with the assembly work that she hadn't made it back to Earth since everything happened. "Soon," she promised, typing a response. "I'll come home soon." But even as she wrote the words, she knew that Earth wasn't really home anymore. Or rather, it was one of many homes now. She had connections across the galaxy, friendships with beings from 100 different worlds. And most importantly, she had her bond with the Dravaks, which could never be broken no matter where she traveled. The creature's thoughts touched her mind gently, showing her its own feelings. It considered Jiwoo its family now, the closest thing it had to the people it had lost, and it wanted her to know that wherever she went, it would follow. "I know," Jiwoo said softly, smiling up at her enormous friend. "We're in this together." That evening, Jiwoo stood on a balcony overlooking the assembly complex. The Dravaks perched beside her, its scales gleaming in the light of 3 moons. Below, beings from countless worlds walked together, talking and laughing, building something new. Hyunwoo joined her, handing her a cup of tea from Earth. "Thinking deep thoughts?" he asked. "Just reflecting on how strange life is," Jiwoo said. 3 months ago I was terrified I would never see another day. Now I'm helping reshape galactic civilization. You earned it. You and our friend here changed everything." The Dravaks rumbled contentedly, enjoying the evening air. Through their bond, Jiwoo could feel the creature's peace. For the first time in 10,000 years, it wasn't trapped. It wasn't tortured. It wasn't alone. "What's its real name?" Hyunwoo asked. "I know we still call it the Dravaks, but that's what the Council called it. It must have had a name before all this happened." Jiwoo concentrated, reaching deep into the creature's memories. She found it. The name it had been given as a child on that beautiful purple-skied world so long ago. "Kael'Varesh," she said softly. "It means star's hope in the old Varani language." "Star's hope," Hyunwoo repeated. "That's beautiful. And fitting, considering what's happened." Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, beings of every species were working together to build a better future. Prisoned planets were being emptied. Slave species were being freed. Ancient wrongs were being addressed. It would take years, maybe centuries, to undo all the damage the Council had done. But for the first time, there was real hope that it could be done. Captain Da-un appeared at the balcony door. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation that needs Jiwoo's attention." "What kind of situation?" "A good one, I think. The science teams working on the Varani genetic samples have had a breakthrough. They think they can begin the cloning process within a month." Jiwoo felt Kalvaresh's joy explode through their bond. The creature released a roar of happiness that echoed across the city. People looked up and smiled, recognizing the sound of hope. "Tell them we're on our way," Jiwoo said, as they walked through the corridors toward the science wing. Jiwoo thought about everything that had led to this moment. If her ship's engine hadn't failed, if she had never entered that forbidden zone, if the Council had simply let her go with a warning, none of this would have happened.